A senior administration official tells CBS News about 500 children in the custody of Customs and Border Protection were reunited with their parents as of Friday night. But hundreds more are still being held in facilities managed by the Department of Health and Human Services. That agency has formed a task force to reunite children with their parents. On Friday, the president tried to push back against his critics by hosting parents of Americans killed by undocumented immigrants. Wei Zhang reports from the White House.
This is what I have left, his ashes.
Sabina Durden spoke about her son Dominic, who was murdered by an undocumented immigrant in 2012. She was among a dozen families invited to the White House Friday, bringing attention to what the president calls the other side of the immigration debate.
These are the American citizens permanently separated from their loved ones because they were killed by criminal illegal aliens.
The emotional event capped off a week of controversy and confusion, resulting in the administration's zero-tolerance policy. More than 2,300 children were separated from their families trying to cross the southern border illegally. On the House floor, California Congressman Ted Lieu played audio of children crying for nearly 4 minutes, leading to a tense exchange with the presiding officer at the time, Representative Karen Handel of Georgia.
The gentleman will suspend.
Why are we hiding it from American people?
The gentleman will suspend.
Earlier on Twitter, the president had accused Democrats of telling their phony stories of sadness and grief, hoping it will help them in the elections.
You're going to have a lot of happy people.
Even after signing an executive order this week to stop the separation of families. But he may have killed the chances of passing a House compromise bill set for a vote next week, tweeting Republicans should stop wasting their time on immigration until after we elect more senators and congressmen, women, in November.
Game over. It takes the wind out of the sails in what might have been a fairly productive week.
For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli. He joins me now from our Washington bureau. All right, Kevin, so the president in his weekly radio address Saturday morning again blamed Democrats, saying that there is no way to pass immigration reform without them. Can you assess that statement for us?
Well, look, Republicans have control of the House and the Senate and the White House. So any type of policy that is coming out of the administration is Republican policy. That said, they do not have a supermajority in the Senate. And so the president is arguing that without a supermajority, they wouldn't be able to more easily get immigration reform passed. The president also earlier this week tweeting out that he thinks that the House should really stop, in his words, wasting their time on the issue of immigration until after the midterm elections. What he is predicting will be a quote unquote red wave. But quite candidly, I think that, this immigration issue has been a tension within the Republican Party for quite some time, particularly between more centrist folks like outgoing House Speaker Paul Ryan, as well as the Freedom Caucus, the more ultra-conservative wing. So it's I'll let people decide whether or not it's a true statement.
Well, on Friday, the president tweeted Republicans should wait until after midterms to pass legislation. You are one of the most plugged-in journalists in Washington, and I'm wondering, what did you hear about what Republicans felt about that?
Thank God is really what a lot of them were saying, because there was no way, Elaine, that they were going to be able to get to some type of cohesive agreement over an immigration debate, Elaine, that has eclipsed them for years, even before candidate Donald Trump, more than just 3 years ago and 8 days to the date, announced his candidacy for president. And in that inaugural candidacy address, really making the immigration front and center his issue. So, outgoing Speaker Paul Ryan is weak now. He is not able to whip these votes, and you have an ascendant Freedom Caucus in which they are trying to capitalize off of the outgoing speaker. So there's jockeying for the speakership going on. And then you have a lot of folks like Congressman Steve King from rural Iowa who are in lockstep with this president and the likes of Stephen Miller, the policy chief in the Trump administration, who don't really disagree with what the president's doing on immigration or the immigration policy that had been put forth. So it's a fascinating issue where ultra-conservatives feel emboldened, centrists are running scared ahead of the midterms, and Democrats feel that they cannot compromise with Republicans given the political issues and the climate as it stands.
So do Republicans think, well, by the time midterms come around, this will be something that we will well have moved past? And what do Democrats think about that? So, look, I think that a fascinating portion of really what went on this week is that the base really did start to break from President Trump's immigration proposal. The Trump base is formed of many different moving parts, and the evangelical community is a huge part of that base. When you have Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son, speaking out against this, that got a lot of attention because evangelicals were mortified at the fact, the so-called family party of family values and these images of being separated from parents. That didn't sit well with the evangelical community, and they made their voices heard. And I talked with pastor after pastor in the conservative movement who were urging this White House to back off on that. In terms of Democrats, look, I mean, we've seen this time and time again, no matter the issue. We're about 6 months out from Election Day, everything just stops from the midterms. We're only a couple months out now. And put simply, Elaine, there's really no incentive for anyone to work together on major comprehensive policy issues right now because of how close we are to the midterms. So the president started this debate by implementing this zero tolerance policy. It's basically up to him now to finish it. Absolutely. And I think what you're seeing is with that tweet that you mentioned earlier this week in which he said, stop trying to get comprehensive immigration reform done because there's no chance of it getting done. When you look at the calendar, I think that was really providing cover to a lot of conservatives, centrists, and ultra-conservatives, and facing the realities of the moment, which is that there's really no chance of comprehensive immigration reform getting done at all. On another topic, your colleagues at Bloomberg report that President Trump is planning to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin next month. What can you tell us about that? So this comes as the president is set to go to Europe next month to participate in a host of meetings. It also comes as this week, Energy Secretary Rick Perry is going to be meeting with the energy minister of Russia here in Washington this week. And it also comes as John Bolton, the president's national security advisor, is overseas in Europe as we speak, laying groundwork potentially for that meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and President Trump. It is not odd for a sitting U.S. president to meet with Russia officials, nor is it odd for them to meet with Vladimir Putin. That said, given the context of the Mueller investigation and all of the criticism that is going on with, put mildly, with this administration's relationship with Russia, it will draw a lot of scrutiny and attention. It also comes from a policy standpoint following the president's embattled stay, really, with the G7, and the president floating the idea of getting Russia to rejoin the G7 and make it the G8. So there's a lot of moving parts here. OPEC in the news as well with oil. A lot of energy moving parts with this potential meeting. All right, Kevin Cirilli in Washington. Kevin, always great to have you. Thank you. Thank you, Elaine.